Tonight's episode of the Arts Show Documentaries is rated M for mature audiences. It contains occasional coarse language.
Then we took her to Chilliwack. We took her. Shall we carry her? Shall we carry her? Towards the place the white place. White we took her.
White woman.
White box.
White passport.
Workers and white. White immoral. Black jam. Black reeds. Black angels. Black snakes. Black woman. Black men. Black boys. Black boys. Black women. Black skin.
We wanted to reach audiences with this season live acts that we normally wouldn't get in the theatre. But we also wanted to take our audiences to other environments as well. There's a lot of younger people who don't necessarily find a theatre environment as a place that they particularly want to go to and see work. So rather than trying to entice them to the theatre, we've actually kind of stepped out and come to Revolver.
I love dance, and Petarkco moved to come into Revolver and do this kind of, it's really accessible and really fun, and it's just bringing dance to people who don't really get the opportunity to go. It's a lot cheaper, it's a different environment.
Apart from feeling like I've been absolutely beaten about by the level of the volume of the sound, but what I think is really interesting is the way they're playing around with different performance conventions.
Choosing the choreographers, we were looking for diversity with a certain sensibility, an overall encompassing sensibility in those diverse works that we thought could actually work at Revolver. We all think our work is completely different to each other. So we can't agree on a particular style because we don't think, there is one. I think it just comes down to a number of people who are working in the same place at the same time in a particular kind of culture. And I think that the more objectified body and manipulated body, either self-manipulating or manipulating by another person, a visceral human body in a technological environment, in virtual space. And so you do get this technology-driven body in a lot of this work. But there is always this sense of intense kind of human there.
It's driven by ballet technique, but it's very much the technique reduced as much as possible and then opened up. It comes from a solo, from one phrase that's then turned into a duo, and then half of the duo is extracted and turned into another solo, and then that's reworked into a quartet. So it's a continual process of folding of one phrase. I want to make the audience work. I'm not interested in an audience that is just there to be entertained, because I can't do entertainment. What I do is really quite dry. It's engaging in history and tradition. And what I'm doing is what ballet is at the end of the 20th century.
It's just really an aesthetic. I think it's actually just an aesthetic, stylistic take that's evolved from a rejection of very organic, flowy, pretty movement. It is robotic, it is mechanical, it's just an aspect of society or life that people are responding to, that there is a slightly more desperate or anxious feeling around at the moment.
Nudity actually started out as a critical attack on myself. It's that whole idea of doing voodoo on yourself, and when your inner critic takes over and you kind of beat up on yourself all the time. The movement within the piece came from the actual voodoo doll that I had made, and I actually gave it to a number of different people who were working on the project and said, oh, now do what you like with this. And they did things with it, and its little head would jiggle around and its legs would be flying up and down. For me, the mask was a thing of you feel misplaced, or you feel like you're walking around with your head on backwards, but you still have to pretend that everything's okay.
I think it's really important for people to experience live movement. You know, the whole talk about information age is about virtual reality and, you know, other sensations, as opposed to experiencing something from an audience perspective in the body.
To deconstruct or recompose or decompose, or taking the body, breaking it down into so many segments and then sewing it back together. There is definitely a robotic and dehumanising dysfunction, which is quite beautiful.
A scientist in Germany, Leonard Hayflick, discovered that a telomere, there's 90 on each end of the DNA strands. Every time that a cell replicates, that one of the telomeres is knocked off. So a cell can replicate 90 times before it lapses into what they call senescence, or cell death. Luke was a metaphor for the body, just the human body, and the way that we try and keep it ticking over. Well, I wanted to get the feeling that the body was being manipulated and forced to go a little bit beyond. Like, it wanted to stop, it wanted to slow down, and the nurses kept winding it up. That's a little metaphor for our need to keep extending our life. It's beautiful, this thing, this ticking over, as mechanical as it might be, all the internal structures, when you reduce them to their, little components, it seems quite clinical and mechanical. But that's the beauty of life, is that it is just little patterns. You just hit go, and each one has its length, and then it stops.
I think the style that these particular group of dancers is interested in is like the movements are incredibly fast, but also almost mechanical, and they take away the expression from the faces, so it's almost like they're working like automatons. Nobody ever engages directly with another dancer with facial expression, ever. Their eyes are almost blank and they look past people or past the audience, so they're turning bodies into computer animated people, whereas we animate cartoon characters to make them look like humans. It's like now we're trying to make humans look like cartoon characters.
I'm a huge fan of animation. I always have been since I was a kid. I really love that, from a choreographer's point of view, that the ability for cartoons, to change a character inside out and to stretch their arm 20 feet, and, and when Coyote drops over the cliff, that kind of his body drops and his head kind of goes boom, and catches up. And it's really frustrating that you can't do that with real people. God knows I try, and they break.
I think a lot of the excitement of the work that we do comes from the fact that you're seeing a body moments before it might break. It's good to push yourself to that limit. Walking away feeling sore sometimes is a great feeling, because if you're not throwing yourself into it with 110%, you're probably more likely that you will injure yourself.
It's also quite thrilling, to be that close to the audience, and because you get such a fantastic reaction, because they're all animated, they're standing up, they're drinking, they're talking in between acts, so they're really ready to respond.
The room was packed every night, so you couldn't move, and people were entertained, and people were disturbed, and people were shocked, and people were amused, and they laughed and excited.
I think what Live Acts does is shift the agenda a little bit about dance or contemporary dance, its place and where it sits, where it should sit or where it shouldn't sit. And I think that's a little scary for some people.
Dance music is very driving, it's very relentless, it doesn't have a lot of light and shade, there's not a lot of melody, it's quite rhythmic and quite aggressive, and that aspect of youth culture and pop culture, I think, has affected choreography.
The music I'm into is definitely very driving, it's very dynamic, and so is Francis's dancing, so that came together really well, especially since the first piece he asked me to use was one of the most sort of brutal, aggressive pieces that I've written. The more aggressive and the dynamic the music, the more energy it creates.
Is it a trend at the moment working with the DJ? And yeah, maybe it is, and I have a very close relationship with Minton Carr, an exceptional turntablist.
Scratching and mixing is a part of DJ culture now. It's been going on for a number of years. Mainly, I'm probably just someone who really loves records, but I guess, you try to do with the noise what you're seeing the choreographer doing with the physical form.
I think what interests me as a choreographer, also I do a lot of acting, so I'm always interested in a theatrical viewpoint. So this piece it's movement, but with a different twist. I just became interested with the idea of being literally upside down and what kind of restrictions or different possibilities there were with the body.
I love the character, the caricature, the storyteller, the narrative. Then there's this other interest about the actual dance of the body in space that makes that character, makes that performance. And in fact, it's a much stronger interest in the construction of movement and what actually makes gestures. I try to thread both of those elements because I'm interested in both of those elements.
People tend to be shocked at times and say, oh, well, you know, Gideon's work is really just about sex and about exploiting the body. And I would agree with that at a lot of times. But I would also say that a lot of dance actually goes down that road anyway.
I never would think to make a piece about, oh, you know, that's really going to wake them up in those seats, you know. For me, the stage is such a theatrical place.
I think some people find it violent and deals with sexuality in a way that they find that they don't like, and definitely has a kind of connection with contemporary fashion and pop culture that not everyone responds to.
Because Gideon's work is also very different to, say, work that I would make as a choreographer. And I think in some instances it's brilliant, in other instances the violence aspect and the portrayal of women is really difficult for me to cope with. So it's actually really nice to do your own work rather than kind of finding yourself in someone else's voice all the time. I was looking at advertising, and I've been in quite a few castings for commercials, and the treatment of people is like they're a slab of meat.
Introducing the incredible Hot Chick from Flemtown. Now you can buy your very own babe with balls who gives great pussy, complete with fuck-me-eyes and large breasts. Hot Chick is guaranteed to keep her figure or your money back. We'll give you Hot Chick for 3 weeks, absolutely free. And if you apply before November, we'll throw in a blonde at no extra charge. Unbelievable! That's 2 fully guaranteed against fatness Hot Chicks with a free trial for only $39.95, plus postage and handling. But hurry, stocks are limited. Don't miss out on the deal of the decade. The amazing Hot Chick, only from Flemtown.
I get sick of a lot of modern dance where they use the same sort of rigid movements, and you find some of that. Whereas I think under the heading of Revolver, in Revolver, these dances can be a little bit more playful and work with a bit more of a dialogue, and there's a little bit more performance art element.
I really wanted to make a very accessible piece for Revolver. I didn't want anyone to go, oh, I didn't get it. I generally use the body in a quite objectified way, but normally I use it as a kind of distancing tool, that objectification, or a way of showing a kind of disconnectedness from the personality or the personal. And in this work, I took that to an extreme, to a point where I felt that it became actually very funny and quite ludicrous. It's more a sort of awkwardness or relentlessness that I generally look for, almost an inorganic quality.
I've always felt that the ideas in my work stem from conflict and a kind of duality, that I'm very interested in presenting two sides of an idea. In the movement, although it's very sequential and rapping and lots of hugging, there is also a little bit of an edge to it that is more violent than that. So just playing with that line between what is affectionate and when does it become oppressive. Happiness doesn't generate as much creativity. To me, happiness is a creative thing in itself, but I think that the more complicated, not necessarily negative, emotions, I feel a desire to work through them, and that's a real creative drive for me.
That's what I like about dance. It should be like that. If you add this sort of component to it, this sort of in-your-face, sort of quick, rough and ready, then it'll bring it more to a sort of easily accessible medium to people.
Everybody that's on the dance floor, I want you to put your hands together and just move your hips to the side.
I think it's been an interesting experiment for Chunky Move to do this. It'll be interesting to see what comes of it, you know, whether it actually brings more people to dance or whether more dance companies start working in different sorts of venues.
Chunky Move have really shaken up the dance community in Melbourne and have given a lot of opportunity for people to make work, and I think they've also brought dance to the attention of a wider audience than previously. They have raised the profile of dance in Melbourne. It's good just for that.
In a moment, a look at the arts show documentaries for next week. And on Wednesday night, to celebrate Australia Day, join us for 3 Australian short films introduced by their makers. Don't miss Homegrown Shorts, Wednesday night at 8:30. But stay with us now for How Do You Want Me?